James Harrington, the king of finance, basked in power and glamour, surrounded by supermodels, yet his heart remained untouched. Until Elena, his invisible assistant, dazzled in a red dress and a single glance flipped his world upside down. Can this Bronx girl melt the icy walls of the CEO? Watch now to discover the love story that shook New York. New York, 2025, the city that never sleeps glowed under neon lights and towering skyscrapers. In the heart of Manhattan, inside a gleaming glass tower, James Harrington reigned as a king of the financial world. At 38, James was the CEO of Harrington Capital, a billion-dollar investment empire. He was not just a successful businessman but a symbol of power, with perfectly tailored suits and a piercing gaze that could silence an entire boardroom. His life was a series of transactions, from multi-million-dollar deals to strategic handshakes. To him, everything could be measured in money or influence. But behind the polished exterior, James led a solitary life. His Upper East Side penthouse, though luxurious with a sweeping view of the Hudson River, felt as cold as a museum. His evenings often ended with a glass of whiskey and a computer screen, analyzing numbers instead of living life. He believed power and control were everything. Love, emotions, or anything sentimental was a weakness for losers. In James's perfectly oiled machine, one person quietly kept everything running: Elena Martinez, his executive assistant. At 29, Elena, a Latina woman with warm brown eyes and a rare but radiant smile, had managed his chaotic schedule, arranged international meetings, and handled financial crises for 3 years without complaint. To James, she was just part of the system, an excellent employee, but invisible, like the air he breathed. Yet Elena was an entirely different world outside the office. Raised in the Bronx, where dreams were often crushed by harsh realities, she worked 2 jobs to support her family. Her mother was ill, and her younger brother was in college. Still, Elena never gave up on her dreams. In her spare time, she planned a nonprofit, Bright Futures, to help kids in her neighborhood access education and opportunities. Every night, in her tiny apartment, she wrote grant proposals and dreamed of changing lives. Tension arose when Harrington Capital faced a risky merger with a Silicon Valley tech conglomerate. Obsessed with the deal, James worked himself to exhaustion, and the pressure weighed heavily on Elena. One late night, as she stayed behind to finish a report, James overheard her on a call with her mother. Her gentle but determined voice, promising to find a way to cover hospital bills, made him pause. For the first time, he realized she was more than an assistant, but he quickly dismissed the thought as a distraction. Everything changed at the annual Harrington Foundation Gala, a lavish event at the Plaza Hotel. James, as usual, arrived in a sleek black tuxedo, ready to impress investors and solidify his status. Elena, always in the background, was invited as a guest, a rare gesture from James to thank her dedication. But no one expected what happened next. That night, Elena would shatter the boundaries between them. Leaving behind her discreet office attire, Elena entered the ballroom in a stunning red dress that hugged her figure, her hair cascading down, her eyes sparkling with confidence, and a smile that lit up the room. James, mid-conversation with investors, froze. For the first time, he saw her, not as an assistant, but as a vibrant, powerful woman. When their eyes met, a jolt ran through him. In that moment, he knew his life would never be the same. Monday after the gala, Harrington Capital office, the air on the 72nd floor of the Manhattan Tower was as taut as ever. James Harrington strode into his corner office with his usual icy demeanor, his charcoal gray suit hugging his frame, his voice sharp as he barked orders to his team. "I need the Silicon Deal report by noon. No delays." But when his gaze inadvertently drifted to Elena Martinez's desk, his heart skipped a beat. The image of her in that stunning red dress at the gala lingered in his mind, an indelible painting he couldn't erase. Elena, as always, was the picture of professionalism. She wore a navy office outfit, her hair tied neatly in a high bun, her thin-framed glasses accentuating her warm brown eyes. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, oblivious to James watching her from behind his office's glass door. To the world, James was still the unapproachable CEO, obsessed with profit and power. But inside, a battle raged. He liked her, though he fought to deny it. "Martinez, in here," he called, his tone curt. Elena stood promptly, iPad in hand, and entered his office. As she placed documents on his desk, their fingers brushed. A small jolt shot through James, making him pull back faster than usual. Elena, unaware, offered a slight smile. "Here's the deal summary, sir. I double-checked the figures. James nodded, striving for composure. Good. Keep it up. But as she turned to leave, he couldn't stop himself from watching her. Her small but strong shoulders, her confident stride, it all unnerved him. He told himself it was a fleeting feeling, that a man like him had no room for weaknesses like love. Yet every time Elena was near, his resolve wavered. In the weeks that followed, James began acting in ways he barely noticed himself. He subtly helped Elena, always under the guise of work. Once, when she stayed late to fix a system glitch, James casually ordered dinner from his favorite Italian restaurant for the office. I don't want my staff burning out, he said nonchalantly, but his eyes followed Elena's grateful smile as she opened the fragrant pasta box. One rainy afternoon, Elena rushed into the office after a vendor meeting, her coat soaked and hair clinging to her cheeks. James, preparing for a meeting, saw her from afar. Without thinking, he pulled a handkerchief from his suit pocket and approached. You look like you swam the Hudson, he said, trying to sound stern, but his hand gently wiped a droplet from her cheek. Time seemed to freeze. Their eyes locked, and Elena blushed faintly. Thank you, sir, she whispered, her voice trembling. James pulled back abruptly, muttering about work, but his heart pounded wildly. These accidental touches became the highlights of their days. When passing documents, their hands lingered a fraction too long. Once, in a crowded elevator, Elena was pressed close to James. He felt her warmth, the faint scent of her perfume, and for a mad moment, he wanted to wrap his arm around her. But the doors opened, and Elena stepped out with a polite smile, leaving James with an aching void. Though he maintained his stern facade, James's small gestures began to make Elena wonder. She noticed he checked on her work progress more often than he had with past assistants. She caught his stolen glances when he thought she wasn't looking. One evening, as they worked late on a major presentation, Elena spilled coffee on her blouse. Without hesitation, James shrugged off his suit jacket and draped it over her shoulders. It's chilly. No need to catch a cold over coffee, he said, his voice forcefully casual. But as his hand brushed her shoulder, they both felt an undeniable spark. The tension escalated as the silicon deal neared its final stage. James worked relentlessly, and Elena was the only one who could keep up. One night, with the office dark and empty, Elena fell asleep at the conference table, exhausted. Instead of waking her, James gently draped his coat over her. He sat there, watching her sleep, and for the first time, he wondered if power and money were truly everything. When Elena woke and saw his coat, she smiled softly but said nothing. Deep down, she knew something was shifting between them. This part ends with James standing by his office window, gazing at New York's glittering skyline. He knew he stood at a crossroads, to remain in his cold world of power or to dare open his heart to Elena, who was slowly becoming the light in his life. Sunday, a rare day off, Manhattan, 2025, the early autumn sunlight filtered through the skyscrapers, casting a golden glow over James Harrington's Upper East Side penthouse. Today, James faced no meetings or endless numbers. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to breathe, or so he thought. But his mind kept drifting to Elena Martinez. The image of her in that red dress at the gala, her warm smile when she thanked him for the pasta, and the fleeting moments their hands brushed in the office, they played like a slow-motion film in his head. Sitting in his sleek, sterile kitchen, James stared at a pan on the stove and had a bold idea. He wanted to cook, not for himself, but for Elena. The thought made him chuckle. James Harrington, who hadn't cooked a proper meal since college, now wanted to impress his assistant. But he couldn't deny that she was stealing his heart, even if he still hid behind his cold, unapproachable facade. James grabbed his phone, his fingers hovering over Elena's name. He typed a message, keeping it professional. Martinez, I need you at my penthouse today, 2 p.m. Some urgent documents to review. His heart raced as he hit send. It was a harmless lie. There were no documents. Instead, he'd planned a surprise dinner. He wanted to see Elena outside the office, not as his assistant, but as the woman he was falling for. Across the city, in her small Bronx apartment, Elena was finishing a grant proposal for her nonprofit, Bright Futures. When James's message popped up, she frowned, surprised by a Sunday work request. What documents could be that urgent, she muttered, but she got ready anyway. She chose a beige sweater and jeans, casual yet elegant, not wanting to look too formal. Though puzzled, she felt an inexplicable thrill at the thought of seeing James. When Elena arrived at James's penthouse, she was awestruck. The sprawling apartment, with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Hudson, felt like something out of an architecture magazine. James opened the door, wearing a simple white shirt with rolled-up sleeves, and for once, he lacked his usual CEO sternness. "You're here," he said, trying to sound calm, but his eyes lit up at the sight of her. "Come in. I'm preparing some things." Elena stepped inside, glancing around. "Where are the documents, sir?" she asked, a hint of suspicion in her voice. James faltered, gesturing to a stack of papers on the dining table, a flimsy excuse. "We'll get to those later. First, have you eaten?" "I, happened to cook something." He led her to the kitchen, where the aroma of grilled steak and mashed potatoes filled the air. Elena's eyes widened. "You cooked? Really?" James laughed, a rare, warm sound. "Don't get your hopes up. I'm not promising it's good." He invited her to sit, setting a carefully plated meal before her. Elena smiled, unable to believe the cold CEO she knew was doing this. They started talking, first about work, but soon about personal things. Elena shared stories of her childhood in the Bronx and her dream to help kids in her community, while James, for the first time, opened up about the pressure of running a financial empire and the loneliness he kept hidden. As the sun began to set, golden-orange light flooded the room, warming the space. Elena stood, noticing the sunlight glaring through the window. "I'll close the curtains," she said, climbing onto a chair by the window. But the chair wobbled, and in a split second, she lost her balance. She yelped, falling backward, and felt James's strong arms catch her. Time seemed to stop. James held her close, their faces inches apart. He could feel her soft breath, see her eyes sparkling in the sunset. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice husky, but he didn't let go. Elena nodded, her cheeks flushing. "I'm fine. Thank you." But neither moved. The air between them crackled with unspoken emotion. "Elena," James said, his voice trembling, calling her by her first name for the first time. "I can't stop thinking about you. Since the gala, since those moments our hands touched. I know I shouldn't, but I like you. A lot." The words poured out like a flood, breaking the walls he'd built. Elena stared at him, her eyes wide with surprise and emotion. "James," she whispered, using his name for the first time. I feel something too, but I thought you'd never notice me, not like this." She smiled, a smile both gentle and strong, and placed her hand on his chest. They stood there, in each other's arms, the sunset wrapping them in a promise. James leaned down, their foreheads touching, and they laughed, feeling like the world belonged only to them. That moment marked the beginning of something new, a love that transcended work and societal expectations. Manhattan, late April 2023. The 72nd floor of the Harrington Capitol Tower buzzed with tension. The merger with the Silicon tech conglomerate, once hailed as a game-changer, hit a critical snag. A major shareholder pulled out at the last minute, plunging the company into peril. James Harrington, who always projected calm in the face of storms, now felt the weight of pressure. Endless late-night meetings, non-stop international calls, and skeptical glances from the board left him near breaking point. But amid the chaos, one person stood by him, quietly keeping everything from collapsing: Elena Martinez. Since their confession in the sunset glow of James's penthouse, their relationship had entered a new chapter. Though they maintained professionalism at work, they couldn't hide their tender glances or secret smiles. But as James's work grew more grueling, Elena became his indispensable anchor. She didn't just manage his schedule. She proactively contacted clients, negotiated with vendors, and even fixed team errors in critical reports. Once, when a Tokyo partner canceled a meeting over a misunderstanding, Elena called them directly, using her tact and warm voice to bring them back to the table. James only learned of it when the partner emailed their thanks, praising his exceptional assistant. Each night, returning to her small Bronx apartment, Elena was exhausted but couldn't stop thinking of James. She worried about his health. He often skipped meals, surviving on coffee. With her caring heart, Elena decided to look after him in her own way. Every evening, she planned tomorrow's menu, choosing dishes James liked: grilled chicken sandwiches, fresh salads, or mushroom risotto. Early each morning, she prepared a meticulous lunchbox, placing it on James's desk with a small handwritten note. Messages like, "Today's a great day, don't forget to eat," or "You've got this, I believe in you," always made James smile, though he hid it from his staff. One morning, when James opened his lunchbox to find homemade sushi with a note saying, "Conquer the world today, but don't forget me," he was overwhelmed. Sitting in his office, gazing at New York's skyline, he realized Elena wasn't just his partner. She was the light in his life. Her simple lunchboxes were proof of a love and care he'd never known before. Gradually, James's business began to recover. Thanks to Elena's quiet efforts, negotiations were salvaged, and the major shareholder recommitted. Partners noticed a change in James. He was no longer the icy CEO, but more open and decisive. At a dinner with investors, a key partner from London, Richard Caldwell, brought up Elena. "You're a lucky man, James. Ms. Martinez is a gem. Without her, this deal might have fallen apart. You'd better cherish that woman." Others nodded, recounting how Elena handled issues with professionalism and charm. James smiled, his heart swelling with pride. The climax came at a gala at the Waldorf Astoria, where Harrington Capital celebrated the Silicon deal's success. James, in a sleek black tuxedo, took the stage to thank his team and partners. Then he paused, his eyes searching for Elena in the crowd. She stood in a corner, in a simple yet elegant emerald dress, smiling encouragingly. James took a deep breath and, before hundreds of guests, said, "There's one person I owe more than anyone. Elena Martinez isn't just my assistant. She's the woman who changed my life. She's not just a colleague. She's the woman I love. Elena, will you come up here?" The room fell silent, then erupted in applause. Elena, blushing deeply, hesitantly walked to the stage. James took her hand, looking into her eyes. "I can't promise you the world, but I promise to spend my life cherishing and loving you." Elena smiled, tears in her eyes, and whispered, "All I need is you, James." They embraced on stage, under twinkling lights, to unending applause. That night, as they left the gala, James and Elena walked hand in hand under New York streetlights. He felt the warmth of her small hand and knew that, no matter what the world threw at him, with Elena by his side, he could face anything. Manhattan, summer 2025. The relationship between James Harrington and Elena Martinez became the talk of Harrington Capital after James's bold declaration of love at the gala. Despite curious stares and office whispers, they stood strong, hand in hand through every challenge. But a bigger hurdle loomed. James wanted to introduce Elena to his family at their stately mansion in Greenwich, Connecticut. He knew it wouldn't be easy, especially with his mother, Margaret Harrington, a powerful, traditional woman with high expectations for her son. James held Elena's hand during the drive from New York, trying to reassure her. "My mother can be tough, but she'll love you once she knows you," he said, though his voice betrayed a hint of worry. Elena smiled, though nervous inside. As a Latina woman from the Bronx, she knew societal and cultural biases could pose barriers. But she believed in their love and resolved to face any challenge. Stepping into the Harrington mansion, the formal atmosphere made Elena feel out of place. Margaret, with her silver hair neatly pinned and an elegant silk dress, greeted them with a polite but cool smile. Over dinner, she probed Elena about her family, education, and job, each question a subtle test. "Ms. Martinez, you're James's assistant, correct? An interesting role, but perhaps not aligned with our family's expectations," she said, her tone gentle but cutting. Elena stayed composed, responding with confidence and sincerity. "I'm proud of my work, Mrs. Harrington. But more than that, I love James for the incredible man he is, not for his status or wealth." James squeezed her hand under the table, his eyes filled with pride. But Margaret only nodded, saying nothing more, and the meal grew tense. After the visit, Margaret voiced her disapproval to James. "Son, you need someone who matches our family standing. Ms. Martinez may be a good girl, but she's not from our world. What are you thinking choosing someone from the Bronx?" Her words, though not malicious, carried deep-seated prejudice about Elena's background and class. James, angry but restrained, replied, "Mother, Elena is the only woman who makes me whole. I don't need her to match our status. She surpasses every expectation I have." In the months that followed, Elena didn't give up. She visited the Harringtons often, bringing small gifts like homemade cookies or flowers from a Bronx community garden. She engaged Margaret in conversations about her passions, like art and charity, and slowly, her sincerity began to melt the older woman's icy wall. When Margaret hosted a charity event in Greenwich, Elena volunteered, working tirelessly to ensure its success. That night, Margaret quietly told James, "She has a big heart, son. I'm starting to see why you love her." The turning point came when James faced a minor work crisis. A key partner canceled a contract over a misunderstanding. Elena, with her tact, stepped in and resolved the issue, saving the deal. When James shared the story at a family dinner, Margaret looked at Elena differently. "You're more than an assistant, Elena. You're James's true partner," she said, her voice warm with respect. From then on, she treated Elena like family, inviting her to events and even seeking her advice on charity projects. One autumn afternoon, Margaret summoned them to the mansion and announced she wanted to plan their wedding. "I was wrong to doubt you, Elena. You're the greatest gift James could have. I want to see you both happy," she said, tears in her eyes. Elena hugged her tightly, feeling the acceptance she once thought impossible. The wedding took place on a radiant spring day in the Harrington mansion's garden. Elena walked down the aisle in a pristine white gown, clutching a bouquet of roses, her eyes locked on James, who waited at the altar. He wore a black tuxedo, his smile brighter than ever. Before family, friends, and partners who'd once praised Elena, they exchanged vows. "I promise to love and protect you, Elena, no matter how the world changes," James said, his voice trembling. Elena replied, "I promise to always stand by you, James, as you brought me into your world." The reception overflowed with laughter and dancing. Margaret, now their biggest supporter, raised a toast. "Your love taught me that the heart knows no boundaries. To your eternal happiness." Under twinkling lights, James and Elena danced, feeling they'd overcome every obstacle to find each other. Their story ended happily, proof that true love can shatter prejudice and bring lasting joy.